Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coding Off the Clock, episode something or other. 9, I'm going to say? I can't remember. It's going to be a potentially short one this evening, depending on how quickly we come to a solution for the problem that we're going to have. I am currently coming off of the tail end of a lot of streaming that I did over on Twitch over on the weekend as part of a fundraising effort. Nala, hello, sir. Welcome. And also, apologies for the stream starting a little bit late, but when I came back from the dog walk, both of my monitors had turned themselves off, and then when I wiggled the mouse, the one with the code on it turned itself back on, and that one didn't. And that's kind of spooky, shall we say. But I got it all sorted out in the end, so I got that going for me. What we're going to be working on tonight, or at least trying to, is paying attention to the fact that parts of our design are kind of hinky, because there are some classes that need to be created right away, and there are some classes that need to be created only after the plugin loaded hook is called. And I suspect that what we need to do is engineer this so that the classes that we care about are all created at the plugin loaded point in an appropriate order. Because otherwise, it's not possible for us to do the things that we need to do. It's kind of unfortunate that we got as far as we did before we realized that we did that a little bit wrong, but nevertheless, that is what we're going to try to pull off here this evening. I'm going to have to try to remind myself what it is that we're actually doing here, because I've done so many streams in the last few days that are JavaScript related, using some new libraries and implementing testing in a different project, that I remember that there is a problem, and I think I had vague ideas of how I would like to solve it, but I don't know exactly what the best way actually is. So I think we're going to need to reinvestigate what we have going on here. And the best way to do that would be for me to start the old stream here. So, to the coding! I hope everyone out there is having a fantastic week so far, or is coming off of a great weekend. What did you guys do for the weekend this week? I did an awful lot of streaming, but when I wasn't streaming, I peeled 3 pounds of pomelos, and we watched Enola and Enola 2 on Netflix, which were quite delightful. So, let's take a look at what we actually have going on here, because we got a fair few changes here. The most important of which is this. This is the bit of code that we created that caused me to realize that my fidget toy, as much like the princess, is in another castle. So that's an unfortunate turn of events. You can see some comments that we have in there. What this class actually is for, as we can see, is it's a singleton that watches the global preferences to know when settings are changing. In this particular case, the thing we care about knowing, pardon me, all that talking this weekend is killing me, is when is the setting for the ignored packages changing. Because if something is added to it and we happen to have any snippets that we enhance that are loaded from it, then we should probably get rid of those because that package has been ignored. Or if something is removed from it, then we should scan that package for snippets that we might need to enhance, because now that it's unignored and the resources are available, we should probably check and see. And all of that works fantastically. We made it as a singleton because there only needs to be one, and it just needs to fire itself off as required. Now, this is the situation where, in order to actually listen for settings, you have to wait for the plugin loaded endpoint to respond with, or be called rather, so that you can respond to your plugin loaded by actually accessing the API. Because if you try to access the API prior to that, it may not work. In fact, if it's a fresh start of Sublime, it most definitely will not work. However, if it's a reload of your plugin while you're developing it, then it'll seem to work. But when you quit and restart Sublime, it won't work until it's loaded once, and then it'll start working. Which is not the sort of situation you want to find yourself in, because non-deterministic bugs are a pain in the butt. So, we created the class. When you initialize it, if there's already an instance, it leaves. Otherwise, it loads up a settings object, caches the value of the ignored packages setting, and sets up a settings listener to be invoked whenever a settings change, calling the function, self.settingsUpdate. I got the hiccups right now. This is just a magic key that you can use to redact your settings listener, which is what the shutdown call does. It clears the clear on change that add on change set using the exact same key, and then gets rid of the instance. Now, we demonstrated this in last week's stream, so if you're unfamiliar with this, you can get a refresher by going back and watching that episode. There should be a playlist linked down in the description. But the important takeaway is when you add an event list, when you add an on change listener, it is persistent until you clear on change it, and that includes if the plugin reloads. Because if the plugin reloads, the listener isn't automatically removed, which means it's still there, holding onto a reference of the class as it used to, or the code rather, as it used to exist. And then when the plugin reloads, it calls add on change again, and you end up with multiple versions of the code listening at the same time. 1, 2, 20. Which is not cool, because you'll start getting notifications twice, and it's a bad show, man. So we know that we should call shutdown in that case. And we have a very simple idea here. And again, you can see logs in here. The reason the logs are in here is because we were chasing and tracing the unfortunate determination on what was actively going wrong. Pardon me for just a moment while I turn on the make my phone be quiet. And there's some breaking news. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, did something. So that's nice. He probably did a lot of things, realistically. That sets the listener. That gets rid of the listener. This allows you to register from an external point for knowing when a setting changes. This settings update is the code that actually gets called when the global preferences change. And in this case, we can get the latest version of the ignored packages, turn it into a set. If it's the same as the version that we cached, then we can leave and not do anything. I presume I turned that into a set. I did. Because if the set of ignored packages is the same now as it was previously, then nothing changed, so we don't care. But otherwise, the list of packages that were removed is the list of packages that used to exist that doesn't include the packages that are in there now. Those are the ones that got taken out. And similarly, if you look at the list of items that are in there now and subtract from it what used to exist, what remains is the ones that were recently added. And then we can invoke a callback. So that part is all working exactly as we would expect. We made a few different changes in here because we made the snippet manager class be a singleton, which means that in this code here, we are taking the manager and getting its instance to figure out what we should expand out in on-query completions. That's not a change that I'm particularly happy with. we removed the enhancements class that was here in favor of initializing enhancements and extending that out so that this can happen only when the enhancement manager is created. That's the first part of this operation. This is where we started noticing things were going a little bit awry. And we can sort of see that there's code in the plugin listener or plugin load plugin here. That's what this particular method is. It's not called plugin loaded here, but it's called from plugin loaded because it's inside the module. That sets up the listener, then the enhancements, then it initializes enhancements, and then it creates the snippet manager using those enhancements. Works. Not the nicest thing to look at. Well, we're going to have to decide exactly how we want that to work. The nice thing here is that with the snippet manager class, we can just go ahead and scan for things instead of using the pre-created instance. And this is the snippet manager. I already checked that in, did I? All right, that's cool. It was the settings listener that was distinct here. That's right. I remember now. The code in the snippet manager now is a singleton. So the init method does nothing if there's already an instance. Otherwise, it saves this instance, saves the enhancement so that it can do other things. The reason that this is important is because when this instance is created, it needs to set up the settings listener. And in order to do that, to be able to know when the settings changed, this part can't happen until plugin loaded has been called. So we need to take special care to change the ordering of how all of that works, essentially. Now, we also have this item in here which allows the snippet manager to know when packages are removed or added so that it knows to either discard snippets from them if they're added to the ignored list or scan packages. That part works rather well. And our enhancement manager here, we also made a singleton. Although I don't think that's strictly necessary. I think if we composed this better, we could probably resolve that as an issue. So. And the init just has sort of an extra item in it. Now, why did I think the snippet settings listener needed to be a singleton? Is the question for the ages. We're going to create that. We're going to create the enhancement manager. I don't understand why we're doing that there. The snippet manager is based on that. So that does clear everything up and make everything be created in an appropriate order. Is the snippet settings listener used anywhere? Yes, it is. The snippet manager uses it. So we can make the snippet settings listener not be a singleton. In favor of creating it and passing it as an argument to the snippet manager, which the snippet manager could use to set up let's see. Yeah. As you can see, we totally do that right in the init. So if we passed it, we could add it here and never care about it again. because the only other places it's going to be referenced are there. We got far too many files open right now, so let's see. We don't care about you. We're going to want you. Okay. If we search for the places where this is listed, imported, then re-exported, implemented, the snippet manager uses it in init, and we use it here. So, if we went actually into the snippet settings listener and where it's actually implemented, instances of this class, watch the globes. We can, oops, just do a little, that's not what I meant to do. Go like so. Let's say that this actually isn't a singleton. We'll leave that comment in there for the time being so we can trace that these things are actually doing what we expect. We don't need that anywhere. It's going to look a little hinky in the close down code, but that's neither here nor there as these things go. So, we don't need you. We can just say cache the list of the currently ignored packages as a set. Listen for changes in settings. In this particular instance, we should probably generate a random key and stash it if we want to create more than one instance of these, because if you happen to create 2 instances of it, then they would both set up okay, but as soon as one of them shut down, the other one would also shut down, which would be an issue. That's not going to be a class method, that's just going to be a shutdown. And oops, that's just going to be that. And then we're not going to want that. We're going to put both of those there. This isn't going to be an okay, that's not going to matter. That's just going to be a self listeners. Yeah. Okay. So now that's the implementation of it. We still want in the lib init to import that and re-export it out so that it can be grabbed. The snippet manager is not going to actually import it. We're going to call this hang on a second. Listener, sorry. We're going to say listener, then enhancements. And we can call this listener add listener. And if we do that, this part becomes a lot clearer. But when we invoke the snippet manager, we need to pass it as a first argument the listener. Like this. We're going to gloss over for a second how that other part's not actually going to work so that we can make things go. So now the snippet listener is fixed. We're still implementing it. That's its actual implementation. It's no longer a singleton. The snippet manager only needs it in one place. And that one place is right here, so that it can listen for settings changes to know to apply something to the list of packages. And the last part is this one, which is the file we were just looking at. So I think we would do a little something like yaw, and then we got to do the that, so it knows that that is a global. And then this is the settings listener shutdown. Our instance of the object that allows us to listen for settings changes. In theory, that'll cause everything to still behave the same as it currently does. In order to check that, we can see things loaded. It set up the settings listener. It tried to add a listener. A listener was added. It scanned all packages. So how we can tell this works is if we delete package A from the list of ignored packages, we see it saying that discarding all snippets in package A because we removed it. If we try to remove package C, we get a similar action. Clearly, the one in hyperhelp does more than it's supposed to, but that's neither here nor there. Because we removed C, it's scanning for help indexes in C, and enhanced snippet is discarding all snippets in package C. Why would it be discarding? Oh, because as part of it coming out, it clears the list. Our logging could do with a little bit of cleanup as well. And again, just to test here, if we add A, the ignored packages now includes A. Hyperhelp unloads help from A. The manager says a change is happening. The list of things added to the list is A. I'm going to verify that that's actually the log that we expect it to be. Because isn't it supposed to display more crap than that? Hang on. Oh, did we turn that off? It's the list of things added, then the list of things removed. And then for everything that's removed, we discard all the things in it. And for everything that's added, we add them in. Discard package discards everything. Scan package first has an operation that discards the package before it scans for other ones, which is why those sometimes appear like they're not actually in sync with reality. So if we reload the plugin, adding C to the list, we'll say that it added C, removed none. Because C was added, why does it say scan C is the real situation we have going on there? That part I don't understand. Did we screw that part up? Whoops. Discard all the snippets that are known to be in that package and then do a fresh scan of snippets. I think we're doing those in the backwards order, huh? I think if something was added to the list of ignored snippets, then you got to discard, and if things are removed, you got to scan. So, whoops. So here we go. We remove package C, and nothing was added. C was removed, so it's going to scan C to find all snippets in C. It's going to discard all the snippets in that package, and life is good. If we delete A, then it's going to remove A. It's going to scan A. Now again, clear console. We're going to add A. It added A, so it's discarding all snippets in A. We add B. It added B. It's discarding all snippets in B. And then we swap B for C. We should see B being removed and C being added, if this works. And there's C being added, B being removed. Because C was added, the snippets in it are discarded, and because B was removed, we're scanning it, which causes it to discard all snippets, but then it actually tries to look for them. It's a bit of an unfortunateness in how we set up that logging, because the logging happens in the discard, but the discard is called as part of the scan to make sure that everything is copacetic. So it would make more sense if the scan said found X snippets or something, but we'll worry about that part later. So that's one thing. So now the settings listener is what it needs to be. That might be all that's required to get this going. I think we want the snippet manager to actually be, so let's go through this in order so that this makes sense, okay? First, we create the object that watches settings, which allows it to know that the API has been set up because this is loaded, which is called from plugin loaded, which allows it to watch the same settings object that the global preferences everywhere uses to know when it changes. And once that happens, it'll log in the console when the settings change happens, and it will fire off an event to anything that listened for it to say, yeah, a package changed, right? Um, Next, we create the enhancements manager. The enhancements manager is the thing that knows about the classes that implement the new expansion variables in snippets, which currently includes clipboard content, um, and the date in a couple of different formats. We then need to call initialize enhancements with that, which is a method that lives inside of this little area here and actually causes it to invoke the method on the enhancement manager to tell it about the enhancements that are currently known, because they are distinct from everything else. In theory, it could try to invoke that on its own. That might actually make more sense. If we know that this happens here. Oh, I think the reason we don't do that is because we'll get a circular dependency. Because this class is in the lib. If it needed to import something from enhancements, then enhancements couldn't load things from lib, which is maybe a problem and maybe not. I guess it doesn't hurt to try, huh? Usually we try to avoid anything in here importing anything outside of itself, though. We could actually put the enhancements inside of lib. Maybe that's the way to go here. Because all of these should also be similarly self-contained. That's going to load something from the lib for log, which is in utils, if I had to guess. That's importing from base, which imports from that, and that is date. So this folder could actually be inside of lib. Since this is all in Git, we can totally destroy ourselves as we see fit here. Move enhancements to lib. Okay, first of all, this can't do that. And it can't do that. And we don't want to reload source.enhancements because it's no longer here. But what we do want to do is that. What was that other file I was just in? We're going to want you. And we're going to want that. How bad is that going to break? Pretty bad, I presume. Okay. Enhanced snippets line 24 wants to invoke in source core. Uh-oh. Oh, that's just because of that, right? So the theory is we get rid of that line and we get rid of that line. They happen inside of the constructor for the enhancement manager. And then we do that and find over here, and we can say that. So let's see what happens here. All the code seems to load. When we get to plugins loaded, we set up the settings listener. We also install the enhancement. So if we look at what's actually happening here, we set up the settings listener. We create the enhancements manager, which installs the enhancements, which displays those things. We run refresh cache, which says it's discarding all snippets. Trying to add a listener because the snippet manager is added, which adds a listener. Then the refresh scans all packages. It finds new latex document. Bob's your uncle. We come over to this little bit here and say that's what the snippet actually looks like. If I copy the text tab trigger and then go over to here, that's the one from the special snippet, and inserts tab trigger and the current date. So the package still works with that, and everything is a little more clean than it was before. We might also note that if we look in the command for refresh cache, it just asks the snippet manager to scan. So we could also just do that instead of having the command, and the exact same thing would happen, but it's a little cleaner what's actually going on there, right? If anybody is watching that has any questions about what it is we're actually doing here or how any of this stuff works, feel free to drop them into the chat. We're here to work on packages, answer questions, and otherwise hang out and have a good time. Hopefully my voice doesn't sound a little scratchy, but I've been streaming all weekend as part of a charity event for which we raised little over $2,000 US for the Cancer Research Institute, which is pretty cool. Okay. Do we want or need the snippet manager to be... Hang on, let's do this. Okay, so settings listener, if we did a search for the settings listener, it's in the libs init because it's stored there. It's actually implemented there. And here in the core, we import it and create an instance. But those are the only places that symbol is needed. So that is good. And we store it in a variable that's module level that things could get at if they wanted to. And this needs to use this global item to let it know that when it sets this, it should set that one instead of making a local with the same name. We don't have to worry about that one here because it's going to bind to that one in the top scope and call it shutdown method. So that's going to set up both of those things. Okay. create the settings listener, which will okay. This will return. Okay, actually, no. What do we actually want to say about this? That's setting up the list of snippet enhancers. This includes we have an ultimate idea to have an API on this that would allow user code to add in extra items, but for right now, that's not present. Create the singleton snippet manager class. Set up events and the list of that is a nicer, cleaner version of what we had before, I think. So, in record time, such as it is, that's only going to be used here. Enhancements Manager is defined in the top level init code. The class is implemented, and the core imports it to create so that it can pass around. So, perfect. Now, the snippet manager, this is the thing that's going to happen in a few places. Right now, it's defined in the library. It's implemented in the library. The core loads it so that at startup it can actually enhance snippets. The event listener needs it to be able to when it listens to on-query completions to know what to put in, what things to add to the autocomplete panel. When the autocomplete panel pops up, it knows to populate in enhanced snippets based on whether or not they apply in the current view or what have you. That's what that one's doing. And this one says every time a file is saved, if it's a snippet, then reload that specific snippet. Now, that part should be good. I kind of don't like the way that we have to use snippet manager.instance for everything. That seems like a bit of a drag. But let's start by cleaning this code up a little bit as needed. So as an untracked item, we added the settings listener. We could actually, because this is here, we could do something like this. Initializing the settings listening code, let's say. And we can say log a little bit of that. We can log settings listener registered a new what's a good way to say this? Something like that, let's say. Let's say we want a little something like that. So what we will note when we actually load this thing up now, if it actually works, and it looks like it didn't complain, which is nice. We're going to get on down to here where enhanced snippets is initializing the settings listening code. There are the enhancements that we've added. The class listens for this and that class listens for this. Discarding all snippets is probably something that we need to worry about in a minute. If we're trying to add a listener, and then we can say a new listener client has been added, scanning all packages, discarding all snippets, adding. So that is sort of a nice clean thing that's doing. So let's go ahead and stage that file. We're happy with that one for the time being. That's our new settings listener class. This file is a file that was just moved, but all it is the class for doing things with the date with the clipboard and the library that imports them, which is we did the get move on those and didn't otherwise touch them, which is why they are loaded. I think we are happy with this code now. We've added in something that loads the classes we care about. There's a global settings listener, which this sets up before it sets up the enhancements for things, and then scans for packages. So that it seems like everything we want to have happen there is done. We're going to skip that one for a second. We're going to skip that one for a second. We no longer need to reload source enhancements because it's actually part of the library code now. And because of that, we can't import all of the items from enhancements. They're actually part of the lib now, which also means we can't export out the enhanced snippet base to things. So we're cool with all of those as changes. The snippet manager is something we're going to want to touch, so we're going to leave that one for just 1 second. We're going to come over here and say that enhancements is part of lib. Are we going to get a circular dependency if we screw with this? I'm imagining the answer to that question would be yes. Oh, also this should totally be lib.enhancements, otherwise that won't work. It's going to get the reload functionality. I wonder if I should put the log in the top level and then I could use it everywhere. Maybe that's a cleverer way to do that. This will register all of the shipped snippet enhancements with the I kind of don't like that name either. We might change that. We might call this and that install enhancements. And put that there. Now this, if we ponder this, this is part of enhancements. Utils doesn't care. The init is going to load utils, then it's going to load that. So it's probably not a circular dependency. Let's find out. From ... utils import log. All right. Does that make us unhappy? It does not appear so. So we can say say that looks a little bit something like that. So that when we restart, initializing the settings, listening code, initializing built-in, installing built-in snippet enhancement classes, then that's what those actually are. Okay, so let's go into that. Where are those prints actually happening? Is the intriguing question of the hour. They're clearly logged, but they're clearly not logged from here. That doesn't matter. It's a funky proxy is what it is. This enhancement manager calls install enhancements. The enhancement manager is not supposed to be a singleton anymore, so we need to clean that up as well. Oh, that happens inside of the actual class itself. Whoops. It does this. A little something like that. Okay. It's going to make that look a little cleaner, I think. Installing built-in snippet, adding enhancement. Oh, I guess I should have put another space in there. That adds a little more to it than I actually want, but it has the stuff that we care about, so good enough. But if we do a little check for this, I think we find imported mentioned in a comment. That's not the thing that I meant to search for. Pardon me. That's what I meant to search for. Imported, exported, defined, used to be created. In no way, shape, or form is the enhancement manager required to be like singleton. Everything else will just work. In theory. So if we scan the thing that we actually found here, that's its own implementation. That's it being used and created. Everything should still work as good as it did ever. All right, that's getting a lot cleaner. And again, as a test of things, if that's the comment that's in the clipboard, then that's the content from the clipboard. There's still the date, so it still works. So what we know is that the enhancement manager now imports the, oh sorry, hang on a second, let's do this. Inside of the lib folder, we make sure to reload the lib enhancements. We'll need to double check that the stuff that's in there is actually still correct. We need to import the settings listener and the enhancements. No, the enhancements aren't supposed to be there. Well, sorry. They're pulled out from the other place, but they don't necessarily need to be imported in that particular fashion. That's going to bring them all in, but this says if you try to import everything, these are the only ones you get. So you can still import those ones, but it's more targeted thing. So I think that is all cool, but before we get too far down the line, we remember to change that one, so that one will probably just work. We probably don't need that either, because it's pretty obvious what that's actually going to be doing based on the comment that's right above it. So that was the enhancement manager, right? In the list, okay, let's do this way. The enhancement base had a log. We changed what it actually logs so that it makes more sense in the context of when it actually happens. Snippet manager we're still not going to worry about. That we're still not going to worry about. That we're still not going to worry about because those are all snippet manager related things. I have a plan for that. Up here in the enhancement manager, we now import the install enhancements, invoke it as part of the init, and we fix that weird thing. And we no longer create that instance because the person that needs us is going to create us when it's actually beneficial to do so. In the library enhancements folder, we need to make sure that we import the lib enhancements and not source enhancements because the module name will be different now that it's moved. From the enhancement manager, we need to import the list of enhancements. Let's double check what that's doing. That's almost certainly not going to work. Oh, that's because we removed it last stream. Right, okay. There used to be a global thing that came out of there, that line that was at the bottom of that file that where we were creating the class, but now we don't do that because it's done in load, so that doesn't need to be there. It moved from the source directory to the lib directory. We need to import that. This is actually a function now instead of just some stuff that happens because it requires the actual instance to do it. And yes, this is decoupled from that so that the enhancements can be in a nice location. We could also make it try to be part of the same code structure in class, but it just seems like more of a pain in the butt. Or if you will, everything, the method inside of the one thing would have to import all of these classes, and that seems like a big pain in the butt. Install enhancements is the thing that this exports because it is created there. So all of that makes sense. The last part of this has to do with the actual snippet manager, because the way we've implemented it is as a singleton, which I think is a good idea, because otherwise we need to have an instance of the class that we create that you have to import from all over everywhere, and I find that personally a little bit less clean than the alternative here. So we still want Snippet Manager to be a singleton, except that we've done it in this way that requires you to throw .instance on everything, which is why we left this one to the last. In particular, those should be not instance methods, but class methods. Or there should be a class method that invokes the instance method. I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, so that you don't got to do that. It can implement those in a saner way. Similar that, and the actual snippet manager has stuff in it that we undoubtedly do not want to have in here. So treat it as a singleton. Our class methods and static methods are different things in Python, but I tend to run them together in my head because I'm a C developer. So that would in fact be the instance. And if we double check here, there, and that one was one too far. If snippet manager underscore instance isn't none, leave. Otherwise, we save it. We save the enhancements. We discard everything. I don't think we necessarily need that log. And this is going to be an instance method, but it's one that's sort of hidden. Okay. Whenever the list of ignored packages changes, or added to the setting, okay. had an idea for that, but that seems kind of crunky. Because the public interface. Perhaps the sanest way to pull that off is to make all of these methods internal and then make class versions of them that just invoke the method on the internal. Yeah, maybe that's what we do. That one wasn't supposed to change. What changed here? Oh. There used to be a lot less stuff there. Gotcha. Ugh. Can a class in Python even have a class? Well, I guess we would make these ones slightly separate, wouldn't we? Yeah, let's take a little quick look here. I know what a singleton is. Please show me. Oh, for Christ's sake. Singleton is a class instance that's been assigned a global name through the global object pattern. For example, the official Python programming FAQ answers a question, how do I share global variables across modules, with the assertion that in Python using modules is also the basis for implementing the singleton design, because not only can the module's global namespace store constants, but multiple mutable class instances as well. Yeah, okay. That's not as helpful as it could be. Is it wrong to want that to be clearer than it is? I'm doing it wrong because I like to do it in init. My goodness. The web is replete with singleton pattern recipes featuring new that each propose a more or less complicated mechanism for working around the method's biggest quirk, the fact that init always gets called on the return value whether the object that's being returned is new or not. So you just use new as the dunder method instead. The above pattern is the basis of every Python class that hides a singleton object behind what reads like normal class instantiation. Well, it's not the pattern I'm using because I'm a big old jerk-faced poopy head, but that's okay. Do as I say and not as I do, I guess is probably the answer to the question we have there. So, I guess the trick to that is this is gonna, if you create another one, it's gonna be an instance that's not connected to anything, right? Here. When you create a new object by calling the class, Python calls the new method to create the object first and then calls the init method to initialize the object's attributes. So if you didn't have an init, nothing would happen. If you use the new, you don't want to use init with that because then you would totally be changing the values of the thing, right? Yeah. Well, I guess the other way to ponder this is how are we actually pulling this off? Because we could probably just make it nicer in general. The thing that we are currently screwing around with is the snippet manager, so I'll thank you to have an appropriate item here. That's you, thank you. Created. Used in the core. You know what? In the interest of not going too bug-eyed over this whole situation, if we did something like that and we looked at what's actually changed in the snippet manager, things kind of look the way we want it to. This would be enhanced let's say those all do the same thing. And then a little bit of that. Okay. In theory, this still works the way that one would expect it to. the messages we see. Initializing the settings listening code, initializing built-in snippet classes, adding enhancement, date snippet, clipboard snippet, discarding all snippets. New listener client has been added. Scanning for enhanced snippets across all packages, discarding all snippets. Why? I don't think the thing that we're doing in the core needs to happen. I suspect that we've made it clever enough. We may not have, but it seems like we probably should. Apparently not. All right. Why doesn't it do a scan as part of the creation here? Huh? Oh, that's why that's happening. We need that because we use it as a short circuit for being able to initialize things. And the last thing that we should actually do here is self.scan. Look for all snippets that. Now that setup is complete, scan for all enhanced snippets across all packages. And then the code from here, don't need you. And this comment needs to change as well. I think there we go. Pardon me for bumping the mic. Initializing settings, initializing built-in snippet enhancements. There they go. The new listener client settings listener client has been added. Should actually be the code there. Scanning for enhanced snippets across all packages. We probably want to tweak that there too. First of all, the event listener. We want something like that, for one thing. Secondly, for scan, that'll probably look a little better. New settings listener client has been added. Scanning for enhanced snippets across all packages. Adding snippet. Okay. We remove C from the list. Scanning for enhanced snippets in package C. Then it says it's discarding all snippets in package C. So because that discard happens as a part of a scan, I think we want to add a quiet equals true into there. So that we can say, if not quiet, do that. The other ones are meant to be more intentional, so we're not going to worry about those ones at the moment. Scanning for enhanced snippets, adding snippets. All right, so if we add package B, settings change on ignored packages detected, discarding all snippets in package B. If we swap B for C, then we should get it saying discarding all snippets in package C and scanning for enhanced snippets in package B, because C was added to the list, which means it's now ignored, so it needs to be removed, and the one that was removed is now added, so that part looks cool. We get rid of both of those. And I think that's us done for that particular change. So let's just take a quick look. We changed that log file to make it clearer. Oh, right. There's a couple other things we're going to clean up there, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. That'll be fine because that's a one-off. The core now doesn't need to do an instance scan because it's just part of creating the snippet manager, which makes a hell of a lot more sense. The snippet manager itself has undergone a fair few changes. Happy with those. And then here, we may need to leave that the way that is. I was going to say maybe we could actually get it to cache that value, but that would require us to be in control of when the event listener is created, and we're not. So that's not cool. Unless we made it a view event listener instead, that made it apply to everything, so there'd be a ton of instances. So as far as this is concerned, I think we're cool with that. Okay. Okay, this one is going to be watch for settings changes. In order to make the ultimate goal easier. Yeah? Which is to have a settings listener that watches the ignored packages setting. Since settings listeners are now at the core, so that's what we have for that. And that is the ultimate goal for what we were doing there. Use a settings watcher to watch for changes in ignored packages. We can determine when a package is removed from the list of ignored packages and scan it for snippets, or see when a package enters the list and remove its snippets. This allows for dynamic snippet scanning when packages come and go, since package control ignores packages before adding them. So that one's now actually complete. Did that one. That one's done. Not sure how to add things to the command palette. I have theories, but I don't know that I just want to get into it right away. Ditto there. Turn on internal logging of things that would otherwise not be seen, which allows for tracing through what the package is doing. Oh, well, it's kind of doing that all the place, all over everywhere right now. Use details would be used to determine if, when adding items to the AC panel, we include details. Without it, the details panel won't show unless something else adds it. And would initially be okay. Yeah. So I think the next thing that we are gonna tackle is this. This can't be done until user ignored snippets and the snippet manager class is implemented. In use, we would, every time we update the list of snippets, also automatically update ignored snippets, setting it if needed to ensure. What's that one that was blocked? This is currently just a global array, but maybe we want to split that up a bit if for no other reason the API would look nice. All right, are we... I remember that one. The idea of that particular thing, and maybe that is what we tackle next, is that this extension manager has the ability for you to add a class, get the list of known things, and get a list of enhancements. What we ultimately want, because right now this add method gets called when the snippet manager is created. Oh, sorry, when the enhancements manager is created. Prior to the snippet manager being created is probably a better way to say that. But this installs all of the snippets, all of the enhancements that we know about. I think the idea was that third-party packages could say from enhanced snippets.lib import enhancement manager. That's why this had to be a singleton, because there needs to be a way for you to get at the existing item. So we might want to do that by adding a new API. The core knows about the enhancements. If there was a core item for adding and removing, I think that would do what we want. That would be used to add enhancements from external places. So you could create your own package or have a plugin in your user package, and every time it's called, it could trigger this. So let's make a note of what we actually want to do with that bad boy. Let's first move it back to here. This would actually be that it is possible for external. Right, that has to go both ways, doesn't it? At a minimum, we should have an API routine in the core.py file that allows external modules to add in enhancements. We probably also want, I don't even know how we would do this. Let's say this. Go away. For ultimate completeness, so let's say that that is going to be what we're going to do for the next thing. So if we add that, we will essentially have the capability for third-party package developers or you as a user of this package to create your own snippet augmentations. You could create a class that's a subclass of that one thing, and then in its plugin loaded, invoke an endpoint in here that will make sure that things go. I think that is what we're going to play with next. And that's sort of the last barrier to this being somewhat useful to people. I'm also going to push this up and tag a new version. We can do some testing of that sort of stuff. So that's going to do it for this stream. We managed to get the stuff done that we wanted to get done. I'm not super duper happy with the singleton in that one class. I'm clearly using the wrong pattern for that, but I can look into that a little bit more. We can look into that a little bit more and investigate that in the next stream. But for the next one, we're going to be working on the last of the main important features, which is allowing external packages in the presence of this module being present to augment snippets, because that means that not only will you get the ability to do things with the clipboard and with dates out of the box in snippets that are expanded as per normal, but also it would allow you to implement any single thing you want. Imagine the ability to, with impunity, add your own variables to snippets. Why, the mind boggles, doesn't it? That's what we're going to be doing next week. I will be streaming this week on Wednesday and Friday on Twitch. Link down in the doobly-doo down there. And there should also be in the description of this a playlist link to the Off the Clock playlist, which should also be on the channel page in general, which will allow you, if you haven't seen all of this and you'd like to go back and see what we did this evening, or even if you're interested, for example, in how settings listeners work in Sublime Text. Last week's stream was a master class in exactly how that works and implementing one from the ground up, which is probably very useful. So with that, I give you my leave. Hopefully I'll see you in the next Twitch stream or in the next stream here. And either way, I would like you to please have a sublime day.